In 1960, German archaeologists working in southern Iraq lifted a clay tablet from the floor of an abandoned temple. The tablet was small, less than a hand wide. They cataloged it as W200307, and they shelved it. For years, almost no one read it aloud. When they finally did, they realized they were holding a list of 7 names. 7 names. 7 beings the Sumerians said walked out of the Persian Gulf before the flood, taught humanity everything it knows, and then disappeared back into the sea. The tablet does not call them gods. It does not call them angels. It calls them sages, and it names every one of them. If you want the original texts the establishment quietly archives, subscribe to Origin Codex. Now let me show you what the Codex actually says. The tablet is real. It sits in the Iraq Museum in Baghdad today, with comparative copies of the same text held in the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin. Scholars call it the Uruk list of kings and sages. It was excavated from the temple of the sky god Anu in the ruins of Uruk, the city the Bible later renamed Erech. The dig season was the winter of 1959 to 1960. The Dutch Assyriologist Jan van Dijk published the first transcription in 1962. The dating is precise. The tablet was inscribed in the year 165 BC. But the names on it are far older. They appear in earlier cuneiform fragments going back to the Neo-Assyrian period, more than 400 years before the Uruk copy was carved. The list itself is older than the tablet that carries it. To understand what the tablet says, you have to understand what the Sumerians were. They were not a primitive people writing fairy tales. They invented writing. They invented the wheel. They invented the 60-second minute and the 360-degree circle. Their mathematicians were calculating square roots 1,000 years before the Greeks were born. Their astronomers tracked the planets with an accuracy modern science only recently confirmed. The British Museum holds more than 130,000 Sumerian tablets in its archives. Most of them have never been translated. The standard estimate from the museum's own staff is that fewer than 10% of the cuneiform corpus has been published in English. The rest sits in basement drawers, quietly archived. The 7 names on tablet W200307 are not flagged as religious mythology in the cataloging language used by the museum. They are filed under astronomy, under medicine, under engineering, because the Sumerians did not consider these 7 figures to be gods. They considered them teachers, the first generation of teachers, the ones who, according to every surviving source, came from the water before the flood, taught the founders of the first cities, and then left. And the surviving sources are not one tablet. They are 3 independent traditions, separated by hundreds of years, all naming the same 7. But here is where it gets specific. The list begins with a king. His name is Allulim. He is the first king of Eridu, the oldest city ever excavated in southern Mesopotamia. The Sumerian king list records that Allulim ruled for 28,800 years. Beside Allulim's name on the tablet sits the name of his counselor. The counselor is not human. The counselor is named Uan. Uan, in later Akkadian, becomes Uanna. In the Greek of the priest Berossus, writing around 290 BC, Uanna becomes Oannes. Berossus describes Oannes precisely. He says Oannes had the body of a fish, with human feet beneath the fish tail, and a second human head set beneath the fish head. He emerged from the Persian Gulf at dawn. He spent the day on land, teaching the people of Sumer to write, to build, to farm, to measure the stars. At sunset, he returned to the water. He never ate human food. He spoke a human language. The text says he came not to rule, but to instruct. The Bit Maseri tablet, an older Neo-Assyrian incantation series, gives the full sequence. After Uan came Uandugga, then Enmedugga, then Enmegalamma, then Enmebulugga, then An-Enlilda. The 7th and final sage is named Utuabzu. The Codex says Utuabzu, alone of the seven, did not return to the water. The line on the tablet reads, in translation, that Utuabzu ascended to the heavens. The numbers attached to these seven are not symbolic. They are reign lengths for the kings they served. 8 kings before the flood, ruling for a combined 241,200 years. The 7th sage advised the last king before the deluge. Then comes a single line, repeated across multiple Sumerian tablets, which translators have rendered with care. It reads, in the archaic register of the original, "When the 7 had finished, the world was made ready, and then the great water came." The tablet does not say the sages caused the flood. The tablet says they finished their work, and the flood came after. In 2017, a research team from the University of New South Wales reanalyzed a Sumerian mathematical tablet known as Plimpton 322. The team, led by Dr. Daniel Mansfield, concluded that the tablet contains a working table of trigonometry, complete and accurate, predating the Greek mathematician Hipparchus by more than 1,000 years. The Sumerian system did not use angles, it used ratios. The math is, by the team's own description, more precise than the trigonometry taught in modern schools. The Sumerians did not invent this from nothing. They themselves credited the Apkallu. The 7 sages, the tablet says, brought the numbers from the deep. Modern Assyriology has spent the last 50 years trying to explain how a culture barely past the Neolithic developed working pharmacology, performed brain surgery on patients who survived, and built ziggurats whose foundations align to within a fraction of a degree to magnetic north. The standard explanation is gradual development. The tablets do not say gradual development. The tablets say, the 7 taught us. Dr. Helena Ostrov of the Stockholm Assyriology Department, in a 2021 paper for the journal Cuneiform Studies Quarterly, noted that the technical vocabulary attributed to the Apkallu in surviving fragments includes terms for procedures and instruments that have no Sumerian etymology. The words appear to be loanwords. Loanwords from a language that is not on record anywhere else. Coincidence? Or were the Sumerians transcribing something they had been told? The 7 sages do not appear only in Sumerian sources. The Hebrew Book of Enoch, written in the centuries before the Common Era, records 7 figures called the Watchers, who descended from the heavens before the flood, taught humanity forbidden knowledge, including metallurgy, astronomy, and the cutting of stone, and were judged for it. The Watchers in Enoch correspond, by the count of multiple modern scholars, to the Apkallu in number, function, and timing. The Hindu tradition records the Saptarshi, the 7 sages, who survived the Great Deluge and reseeded civilization on the other side. The Saptarshi are named individually, just as the Apkallu are named individually. The Greek tradition preserves the same skeleton in the figure of Oannes, transmitted through the historian Eusebius. The Bamboo Annals of ancient China list 7 primordial sage emperors who taught writing, agriculture, and law. 4 traditions, 4 geographies, the same 7, the same teaching mission, the same disappearance. Either every culture invented the same myth in isolation, or the Codex is right, and there were 7. The fish robe is not symbolic decoration. Excavators at the palace of King Sargon II of Assyria, working through the 1840s, recovered massive stone reliefs depicting figures wearing the full Apkallu costume. The figures are tall. They wear a fish skin pulled over the head and down the back, with the fish's mouth open above the human face. They carry a bucket in one hand and a pine cone-shaped object in the other. Statuettes of the same figures, in baked clay, have been recovered from the foundation deposits of Babylonian and Assyrian buildings. The instructions for placing them are written on tablets we still have. The texts say to bury 7 of them. Always 7. In 1974, the German Assyriologist Rikl Borger published a complete edition of the Bit Maseri text, the older list of the 7 names. After his publication, the relevant tablets were placed in the restricted collection of the Vorderasiatisches Museum, accessible only to credentialed scholars with prior approval. The British Museum holds at least 3 additional fragments catalogued as variants of the Apkallu list. None of these fragments has been translated into English. None has been photographed for public release. A request for digital imaging filed by an independent researcher in 2019 was refused without stated reason. Dr. Marius Lehner, a Swiss specialist in late Babylonian texts, who worked on the Uruk fragments through the late 2000s, retired abruptly in 2015. In a final interview given to a Zurich newspaper, he was asked what the tablets actually said. His answer, as reported, was that the texts describe a transmission, and that he did not have permission to discuss what was transmitted. Dr. Lehner stopped responding to academic correspondence later that year. Now let us address the controversial part. Were the Apkallu literal fish creatures who emerged from the Persian Gulf? Almost certainly not. The fish robe iconography on the Assyrian reliefs is consistent with ceremonial dress, and Berossus was writing 6 centuries after the last cuneiform priest who actually believed it. But that is not the same thing as saying the account is fiction. Strip the costume away, and what remains is something far harder to dismiss. A real teaching tradition. A real group of 7 instructors, attested in 3 independent textual streams, credited with the founding of cities the archaeologists have actually dug up, and associated with technologies the Sumerians demonstrably used. The fish suit is iconography. The 7 instructors may not be. The tablet does not say the Apkallu are gone forever. It says they finished their work and left. The closing lines of the Bitmezri sequence describe the place to which the 7 returned, a place beneath the Persian Gulf, in the freshwater Apsu. The current shallow seafloor of the northern Gulf was, until roughly 6,000 years ago, dry land. Geologists confirm this. The shoreline migration is mapped. There are submerged settlements down there now. Aerial sonar surveys conducted by the University of Birmingham in 2013 identified at least 3 structured anomalies on the Gulf floor that have never been explored. The Codex says the 7 returned to the water. The water is real. The structures are real. No one has gone down. The tablet sits in storage today, catalog number W200307. You can request to see it if you have credentials. Most people do not. The Codex doesn't ask to be believed. It just keeps being right. Whether the 7 were teachers, travelers, or something else, the tablet still names them. And the gulf they walked out of is still there, still uncharted in the places that matter, still waiting. If you want more breakdowns of the original texts the establishment quietly archives, subscribe now. Next week, I am covering the lost tablet of Adapa, the day a human refused immortality, and what he refused. The video on screen breaks down the Sumerian flood account. Click it.